Hey everybody, it's Coach Myers here over at Elm Tree. Today I'm going to be reading a book by Dr. Seuss and it's called If I Ran the Zoo. It's a pretty good zoo, said young Gerald McGrew, and the fellow who runs it, he seems proud of it too. But if I ran the zoo, said young Gerald McGrew, I'd make a few changes. That's just what I'd do. The lions and tigers and that kind of stuff they have up here now are not quite good enough. You see, things like these in just any old zoo, they're awfully old-fashioned. I want something new. So I'd open each cage and I'd unlock every pen, let the animals go and start over again. And somehow or other, I think I could find some beast of a much more unusual kind. A four-footed lion's not much of a beast. The one in my zoo will have 10 feet at least. 5 legs on the left and 5 more on the right. Then people will stare and they'll say, "What a sight!" The zookeeper, new keeper Gerald's quite keen. "That's the darndest lion I ever have seen." Check out that line. My new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will make people talk. My new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will make people gawk. And the strangest odd creatures that ever did walk. I'll get for my zoo a new sort of hen who roosts in another hen's topknot, and then another one roosts in his topknot of his, and another in his, and another in his, and so forth and upward and onward. Gee whiz. But that's just a start. I'll do better than that. They'll see me the next day in my zookeeper's hat, come into my zoo with an elephant cat. They'll be so surprised they'll all swallow their gum. They'll ask when they see my strange animals come, "Where do you suppose he gets things like that from? His animals all have such very odd faces. I'll bet he must hunt them in rather odd places. Look at that elephant." "And that's what I'll do," said young Gerald McGrew. "If you want to catch beasts you don't see every day, you have to go places quite out of the way. You have to go places no others can get to. You have to get cold and you have to get wet too. Up past the North Pole where the frozen winds squeal, and I'll go and I'll hunt in a Skiegelmobile and bring back a family of what do you know, and that's how I know my new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will grow." Look at that machine. "I'll hunt in the mountains of Zumba-Matant with helpers who all wear their eyes at a slant, and capture a fine fluffy bird called the bustard, who only eats custard with sauce made of mustard, and also a very fine beast called Flustered, who only eats mustard in a sauce made of custard. I'll catch him in caves, and I'll catch him in books. I'll catch him in crannies, and I'll catch him in nooks. Then if you don't read about that you don't read about in geography books, I'll catch him in countries that no one can spell, like the country of Madafapata Papel. In a country like that, if a hunter is clever, he'll hunt up some beasts that you never saw ever. I'll load up 5 boats with family of jotes, whose feet are like cows but wear squirrel skin coats, and sit down like dogs but have voices like goats, expecting they can't sing the very high notes. And then I'll go down to the wilds of Nantucket and capture a family of lunks in a bucket. The people will say, "Now I like that boy heaps. His new zoo, McGrew Zoo, is growing by leaps. He captures them wild and he captures them meek. He captures them slim and he captures them sleek. What do you suppose he will capture next week?" I'll capture one tiny, I'll capture one cute. I'll capture a deer that no hunter will shoot. A deer that's so nice he could sleep in your bed. If it weren't for those horns that he had on his head. Look at that crazy creature. And speaking of horns that are just a bit queer, I'll bring back a very odd family of deer. A feather, a mother, 2 sisters, a brother, whose horns are connected from one to the other, whose horns are so mixed they can't tell them apart, can't tell where they end, can't tell where they start. Each deer is mightily puzzled, he's never yet found if his horns are hers or the other way around. This book I'll capture them fat and I'll capture them scrawny. I'll capture a scraggle-foot mulligatawny, a high-stepping animal, fast as the wind, from the blistering sands of the desert of Zend. This beast is the best. This beast is the beast that the brave chieftains ride when they want to go fast to find some place to hide. Mulligatawny is fine for my zoo, and so is a chieftain. I'll bring back one too. In the far western part of southeast North Dakota lives a very fine animal called the Iota, but I'll capture one, who is even much finer in the northeastern west part of South Carolina. When people see him, they will say, "Now by thunder, this new zoo, McGrew Zoo, it's really a wonder." Most beasts are quite friendly, but still in some lands some beasts are too dangerous to catch with bare hands. For those that are ugly and vicious and mean, I'll build a bad animal catching machine. It's rather expensive to build such a kit, but with it a hunter can never get bit. Oh, that's a clever looking machine. Look at that. The zoo should have bugs, so I'll capture a thurl whose legs are snarled up in a terrible snarl. And then I'll go out and I'll capture some chugs, some keen shooter, mean shooter, bean shooter bugs. I'll go to the African island of Yurka and bring back a tizzle-top tufted mazurka, a kind of canary with quite a tall throat. His neck is so long, if he swallows an oat for breakfast the first day of April, they say, it has to go down such a very long way that it gets to his stomach the 15th of May. Look at that long neck. I'll bag a big bug who is very surprising, a feller who has a propeller for rising, and zooming around making cross-country hops from Texas to Boston with only 2 stops. Now that sort of thing for a bug is just tops. And when I've caught him, the next thing you know, I'll go and I'll capture a wild tic-tac-toe with X's that win and with zeros that lose. He'll look mighty good in his zoo of McGrews. I'll bring back a gusket, a gherkin, a gasket, and also a gooch from the wilds of Nantucket. And 8 Persian princes will carry the basket, but what their names are, I don't know, so don't ask it. In a cave in the Khartoum lives a beast called the Natch that no other hunter has been able to catch. He's hidden for years in this cave with a pout, and no one's been able to make him come out. But I'll coax him out with a wonderful meal that's cooked by my cooks in the cooker-mobile. They'll fix up a dish that's just his to taste. 3 chicken croquettes made of library paste. Mm. Then sprinkled with peanut, shucks pickled in spice, then baked at 600 degrees, and then iced. It's mighty hard cooking to cook such a feast, but that's how the Nuzu Magruzu gets beast. I'll go into the faraway mountains of Topsk near the river of Nopsk, and I'll bring back an Obsk, a sort of a thing of a kind of Mabobsk who only eats rhubarb and corn on the Kobsk. Then people will flock to my zoo in the Mopsk. McGrew, they will say, does a wonderful jobsk. He hunts with such vim and he hunts with such vigor. His new zoo, Muzugu, gets bigger and bigger. There's an Obsk right there. Right there. I missed it. And speaking of birds, there's Russian Paluski, whose headski is redsky and his belly is bluesky. I'll get one of them for my Zooski Magruski. Look at that funny looking creature. Then the whole town will gasp, why this boy never sleeps. No keeper before that ever kept what he keeps. There's no telling what that young fellow will do. And then just to show him, I'll sell to Catrue and bring back an itch crutch, a preep, and a prue, a nurgle, a ned, and a sea sucker too. I'll hunt the jungles of Hippanohungus and bring back a flock of wild Biponobungus. The Biponobungus from Hipponohungus are better than those down in Dippanodungus, and that's why I'll catch 'em in Hipponohungus instead of those others, Nungus and Dungus. And people will say when they see Biff bounding, this zookeeper, new keeper's simply outstanding. He travels so far that you think he would drop. What do you suppose this young fellow will stop? Stop! Well, I should, but I won't stop until I've captured the Visimawizimadil, the world's biggest bird from the island of Guark, who only eats pine trees and he spits out the bark. And boy, when I get back to him, to home to my park, the whole world will say, young McGrew made his mark. He built a zoo better than Noah's whole ark. These wonderful, marvelous beasts that he chooses have made him the greatest of all the McGrewsies. While they'll all cheer, "What this zoo must be worth! It's the goldarndest zoo on the face of the earth." "Yes, that's what I'll do," said young Gerald McGrew. "I'd make a few changes if I ran the zoo." And that is If I Ran a Zoo by Dr. Seuss. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.